What is the greatest comeback to insult you've ever heard? Joe Pine interviewing Frank Zappa. Joe, I guess your long hair makes you a woman. FZ, I guess your wooden leg makes you a table. How does a dude named Pine have a wooden leg? What if it's mahogany or oak? During WW1, Switzerland had a tiny standing army, but they were very skilled marksmen. Wilhelm II of Germany asked what 250k Swiss troops would do if he decided to invade with 500k German troops. The Swiss said, shoot twice and go home. Switzerland is actually neutral now in part because they were such good fighters. Many European countries hired Swiss mercenaries to fight for them. At least, that's what I heard in a YouTube video. 18th century British radical politician John Wilkes was told in Parliament by a political opponent, "Sir, I do not know whether you will die on the gallows or of the pox." Wilkes shot back with, "That depends, my lord, on whether I embrace your lordship's principles or your mistress." My grandparents used to bicker. My grandmother generally came out on top, as she was fierier. One time though, she was asking him to do a bunch of stuff, and he muttered, "If you'd lose some weight, you could do it yourself." She fixed her gaze on him, and glowered, "I'm thinking of getting rid of about 200 pounds of useless fat immediately." He replied, "You're going to cut off your foot." Someone yelled out in a Walmart, "I'm not ashamed of who I am." Another voice echoed back, "That's your parents' job." Back in middle school I was at Walmart with a friend of mine looking for pants. Being a tomboy, I like to wear baggy boys pants. Nor did I wear makeup. Another kid came up to me and snarkily asked, "PFFT, what are you, a boy or a girl?" And without missing a beat I responded, "Why, do you think I'm hot?" He just got flustered and walked away mumbling obscenities. This was the 90s, so that gender question actually was insulting to my 14-year-old brain. Not the greatest, but I still hold pride for my quick wit back then. Too bad that's all gone now. For some reason everyone in high school thought I was a lesbian. So a straight dude in my grade walked by me and was trying to make fun of me gay bash and said, "Well, at least I don't like girls." I just kinda stared at him and waited for it to click. Saw a clip of a stand-up comedian the other day, and he says something along the lines of, "The first time I had sex it was terrible. The first time I had sex." And a woman chimes in with, "You mean yesterday?" Crowd laughs for a while, and while the comedian is waiting for them to calm down you can see the gears turn in his head. Once it gets down to basically a few chuckles, he just says, "Glad you remember," and the crowd just lost their It was amazing. I used to work with this like 70-year-old woman. She was our supervisor, and one day one of the ladies who worked with us told this old lady to kiss my A, and the old lady replied, "Where do I start? You're so fat your crack goes all the way up your back." A friend in high school on our way to a track meet. He was staring at a car in the parking that was really nice, when this bag saw him. Back, "Why bothering looking at that when you know you'll never be able to get one?" My friend, "The same reason you watch porn." The entire bus erupted, and it's still one of the funniest things I've ever heard. I asked my mother why she always wears makeup despite being in her 40s. She told me she wears makeup so she doesn't look like me. A guy makes fun of his bald friend by rubbing his head and saying, "Wow, your head is as smooth as my wife's bottom." The friend also rubs his head and says, "Wow, you're right." One of my co-workers was cold calling customers, trying to get appointments to drum up business. One of them told him to go F his hand, and he responded with, "I've got that penciled in for 3. I should be done by 4 if you'd like to come in for an appointment then." The guy laughed his A off, and ended up coming in for the appointment. I had a co-worker, also in sales, also cold calling, take no middle-aged woman. When people hung up on us, sometimes we'd call back and play dumb, often people would realize they were being rude. This is more business to business. Anyhow, this lady couldn't help herself, so she'd call back, feign the same polite friendliness, and say, "Hey, sorry, I think we were rudely disconnected." Winston Churchill, of course. Lady Nancy Astor, "Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your tea." Churchill, "Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd drink it." Winston, "You are drunk, disgustingly drunk." "Yes, madam, but you're fat." "Tomorrow I will be sober, but you will still be ugly." You sure do talk a lot for never saying anything. In Mexico, we use the word cantinflea for that. It comes from a comedian with a long career from the 30s to the 80s named Canton Fliss, and that was his shtick. Talking too much but never saying anything. I was the one insulted, but not the one with a comeback. I was out with a co-worker and her friends, and my buddy and I were leaving a little too early for her sensibilities. She jokingly got up in my face and said, "Smell that? Smells like PSY." A guy playing at the pool table next to us stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, that must be me. I just ate." It was amazing. Not heard, but read. Easily the Spartans' reply to Philippi of Macedon. As Philippi of Macedon was conquering Greek city-states left and right, Sparta was left alone. Philip had achieved a crushing victory, and Sparta was relatively weak and without walls. Philip sent a message to the Spartans saying, "If I invade Laconia you will be destroyed, never to rise again." The Spartans replied with one word, "If." My grandma asked my cousin, who'd had lots of partners and 2 kids at this point, if she was ever going to get married. "Cousin, it's not the same nowadays. We don't buy cars without test driving them first." "Grandma, yeah, but they don't let you put 100,000 miles on them either." Point goes to Granny. I've been called worse things by better people. For context, this was famously said by former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau when he found out Richard Nixon called him an a-hole. A friend of mine was getting beheaded by these 2 identical twin girls in a class I had once. He replied with a troubling look on his face and said, "If you 2 are identical, how come only one of you are hot?" That dude played the long game as those 2 girls looked rather perplexed for the rest of the session. Sorry on this topic. If you want to incite chaos, go on a girl's Instagram and find a group photo of 3 or more, then comment, "You 2 look great." In high school, we congregated in our cliques around the benches. One friend is cracking his knuckles and did this fairly often. Another friend saw this and remarked, "You pop your hands a lot. You must jerk off a lot." The friend that popped his hands immediately looks at him and calmly says, "You pop your jaw a lot. You must suck dick a lot." Weirdly enough, no one laughed. We just all shrugged and took it as a logical explanation. It's been over 20 years and I still think about the logic. In middle school, a boy asked when I was going to grow some boobs, so I asked him when he was donating his. I'm still really proud of that one. The greatest comeback I witnessed was when Kumail Nanjiani was on Mean Tweets and someone asked, "Is your dick multiple colors?" And he said, "Yes. Every shade of your mom's lipstick." What are you looking at? I'm still trying to find out. When I used to say, "What are you looking at?" to my mum, she used to say, "I don't know." The label fell off. On a construction site one afternoon, different trades were working in the same area. Like silly team sports, the Sparkies always hang with the Sparkies and the Turd Wranglers always hang with the Turd Wranglers, and anytime they are together it turns into a pointless dick measuring contest, usually not literally. One particularly childish exchange saw 2 men chopping back and forth. Blah blah blah. Finally one of them spits out this classic, "I've got girth like a can of con," and the clapback was unforgettable. "But you've got length like a can of tuna." Everyone busted up. Mr. Girth tried to hide his embarrassment, but was tied up. No comeback, and a room of men laughing uncontrollably. Good times. Context: John Oliver from HBO interviews Stephen Hawking. May he rest in peace. J.O. And there may be a universe where I am more intelligent than you. There may even be a universe where you are funny. It was a exchange between 2 co-workers a few years back. Basically a slut shaming gone wrong. Person A had only ever slept with one person, their previous boyfriend that they were still obsessed with. Person B was the opposite and would bang a different person every week. Person A: "I can't believe how many people you've slept with. I don't understand how people can have sex with someone they aren't in love with." Person B: "Well, your ex-boyfriend seemed to manage it okay." Person A: silence as he dies inside. The classic, "You're adopted, at least my parents chose to have me." Had a friend growing up who had an adopted brother a year or so younger. They would always talk shit, fight a bit here and there, and one time my friend says to his brother that he was adopted and can go F off. He knew he was adopted, and without missing a beat he shot back at my friend, "Yeah, well, clearly you weren't enough for mom and dad. That's why they bought me." Yes, he used the word bought. Glenn McGrath, Aussie cricketer. Got frustrated with Edo Brandis as his every attempt to stump Brandis failed. This is what happened next. McGrath, why are you so fat? Brandis, because every time I F your wife, she gives me a biscuit. Easy. Now, don't let your brains go to your head. My grandma got into a fight at the grocery store with a guy who told my 9-year-old brother to move the F out of the way. They were going at it and his final words were "suck my dick," she said across the store if I could find it. I expected a better insult from someone of your upbringing and education. If you weren't so stupid, what would you be? Asks the husband. The wife replies, without even skipping a beat, single. Me. We should learn from our mistakes, my friend. So that's why you have a younger sister? Gandhi after a reporter asked him a question. Reporter, what do you think of Western civilization? Gandhi, I think it would be a good idea. Definitely a great comeback, but not to an insult, more to an annoyance. I was a camp counselor for a few years at a summer camp. One day my group took a hike to a large rock where we had lunch. My campers were between 8 and 10 years old. This one kid we'll call Jeff keeps poking another kid we'll call Matt in my group to look at this hole in the rock. It's so cool. It's like 6 inches deep and the other kid is clearly getting annoyed just trying to eat his lunch. He keeps shoving sticks into the hole and trying to get everybody to look at it. Finally Matt just puts down his sandwich, looks at Jeff, and goes, "I'll be 6 inches deep in your mom later if you don't shut up." I was trying so hard to be stern with this kid for saying something so inappropriate, but I kept cracking up. It was just such a disproportionately ridiculous thing to say coming from a 9-year-old.